Okay. Well, just a quick reminder to everyone on the call that this is being recorded. You can get the recordings of this and all the previous meetups on our website. And I think we're happy, and also Peter's happy, with any questions. I think during the presentation, I think we're quite happy to ask questions. I think when I have a chat with Peter, we'll have some time for questions or other things at the end of it. I thought I was going to do a quick recap of what we've been up to. I think we're coming out of a bit of an interesting time, certainly with the transport sector, where I think the attention has been on anything but optimization. Even though I can tell you an interesting story of one of our customers where they were telling us that their biggest problem was getting drivers, and after we did a study, we identified that they probably could have done with between 10 and 20% less drivers by giving all the drivers they have a more consistent working pattern. But so sometimes the problems are addressable by optimization, but I think that's taken the sector by taking a lot of attention. Although now we're getting a lot of inquiries now around what I might call network design, now that the dust has settled. And I think a lot of operators are starting to think, okay, well, we're working as hard as we can, as efficiently as we can, but actually are things like, our distribution centers in the right places, and have we got assets in the right places, and are we running the routes that... So it's not really an optimization question on a day-by-day basis. It's more, have we got the network design so that we're actually not trying to, if you like, optimize our way out of a problem which we've actually caused ourselves through our fundamental network design. So I think that's an interesting issue. And the other thing that seems to be coming to mind is more interest in the, if you like, the end-to-end, which is how can I turn an invoice into money, with less hassle and less admin. And I think that's a big opportunity in the future to try and make, not necessarily around optimization, but make the whole process supported by the IT that's there, rather than a very disjointed process with lots of spreadsheets. And I see that as a big opportunity for a lot of people to try and smooth that passage. But the other area that we've been doing a fair amount of work in, that for once is actually coming back, is on the production side for industry. So although we don't make an awful lot of stuff in Australia, we do make some things. And we've got a couple of new projects now looking at how to schedule production better. And this comes from COVID, because a lot of manufacturers at the moment are struggling to get materials. So it used to be the case of, what materials do I need to make what I've told my customers I'm making? Now it's more a question of, what can I make with the materials I can actually get hold of? And that's not quite the same problem that a lot of existing software solves. So we're working with a couple of customers around that basis. And it's around more disruption recovery. So saying, okay, we've made a schedule, but on the day things are changing. What do we need to do to actually compensate for the fact that we can't get the materials, or sometimes the staff that we thought we'd have, and still make as much as we possibly can? So those are the sorts of things that that seem to be coming at us at the moment. I'd like to do more in the alert safe rostering area. We've got a few small projects there, but again, I think with COVID, although fatigue management in the health sector should have been a big issue, they sort of they were too busy, if you like, cutting down trees to sharpen the saw, as they say. And so there was, even though it was a big issue, I think it was shelved. Like in crisis management, it's just get people in regardless, and then worry about burnout later. And I think that's not necessarily such a good policy, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity for the fatigue management stuff. So anyway, enough from me. And I'd like to introduce Peter Carney, who is someone I've known for about 10 years, I think, mainly in the context of innovation and optimization. And I was planning to have a chat with Peter around questions involving things where innovation can potentially change or improve the performance of a business. Not necessarily all the bigger questions, just focusing on innovation. So first of all, Peter, I wonder if you could introduce yourself to our group, and then we'll have a few question and answers, hopefully.
I'm sure you'll have the questions. I'm not sure whether I'll have the answers, but hi everyone. My name's Peter Carney, and I guess for the last 40 years, I've sort of worked in and around that sort of interface between technology and business, always trying to convince businesses to sort of pick up a bit of technology here or there, because that might go well for you. And I've spent my career working in the mining industry and then in the steel industry, so manufacturing. And over the last 7 years, I've been working for a company called Toll in a role there, initially a strategy role, and the last few years where it was an innovation role. And I've recently hung up my boots and find myself on a call with you guys. So that's okay. I'm more than happy to come and chat to you and tell you about the checkered last 40 years.
Yeah. So just like Meghan Markle, you can say whatever you want to say now.
Probably, and I probably will.
Yeah. So, well, I've got a few questions. So, at your roles, were you looking at sort of technology innovation or broader sort of business model innovation, organizational innovation? How broad were your roles?
So it's only innovations the last few years at Toll, but look, to be fair, my title wasn't innovation before that, but I was certainly looking at innovation. With the formal title, it was looking at anything. So if somebody had a better way to contract with someone else, I was interested to encourage them to do that. If it was an organizational change, I was interested in encouraging people to do that. If it was robotics, I was interested in encouraging people to do that. The probably reasonably unsuccessful, I suppose, encouraging people had to a bit to do with the dynamics of the company at the time. Often I was interested from the technology side of things. So even though the position was as broad as it could be, technology was a little bit of a comfort zone for me. So one tended to go back to that, and indeed, I think it's the breakthroughs in technology that sort of create the opportunity for change anyway. So there's probably a reason beyond it being a comfortable area for me as to why that probably dominated the projects that we were looking at.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of you mentioned that it was very, very modestly, probably unsuccessfully. What about the previous companies you worked for? When transport's got its unique flavor, hasn't it?
Yeah, transport does. Transport's tougher than the other ones, actually. I'm not sure if that's always the case or just my particular experience at Toll, but it was tougher. But sorry, what was your question again? So
you said it was pretty difficult. Is it do you think it's the sector, or is it the actual company, do you think, or is it? I mean, manufacturing's got challenges, but I always think the interesting thing with manufacturing is it's exposed to foreign competition, which makes it a lot more imperative to innovate.
Yeah, no, look, they all have all sectors have their problems. I like to think that, and I think we were discussing this the other day. Simultaneously in a company, you can have absolute excellence happening in one part of it, and in another part of it, not very excellent at all. And so I think that works for the industry as well. I think it would be wrong to sort of brand, to use generalizations. So I've also got a particular saying that sort of innovation, or rather, not innovation, but rather ideas have their time. And it's been my experience that you can come up with an idea and a lot of people won't take a lot of interest in it. And then 2 years later, that idea exactly the same idea, will be grabbed with both hands, and everyone will be saying, well, what a good idea. I'm glad we thought of that. And it's the reality of organization. Sometimes you don't have the right people with enough time to consider something, or the organisation can be going through some difficult times. It's just priorities. But it amazes me that is the case. That ideas, that the perfect idea will not necessarily proceed in any particular organisation. And I think you may well experience that with Opturion, that you can present an idea to someone and they don't like it, and then 3 years later they come back and give you a call and say, hey, remember when we were talking about something? So you have to wait sometimes. And part of the thing about innovation, if I had a learning, is that you need to persist. So if you think you've got a good idea and it finds no traction, suggest it again. 6 months later, and eventually, if it is a good idea, it will get up. And if it's not, well, it wasn't a good idea, was it? It's just that you thought it was.
Well, it's a bit of a variation on the theme. The customer is always right, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't, if they're not. They used to call it, if someone was teachable in a previous organisation I was at. If they're not teachable, then you.
Well, there's legitimate reasons. Some organisations have legitimate reasons why they don't do things. I can remember at Bluescope Steel, they lost $1 billion one year, and so the idea of wanting to spend more money wasn't particularly palatable. Then they lost $1 billion the next year as well. So they have good reasons sometimes for why it's not the right time.
Yeah. Did you want to ask a question, Mark?
Yeah.
Out of sequence?
Am I in the wrong order? Sorry.
That's all right. No, go ahead. It's fairly informal.
Yeah. I was just curious. So a big company will often spend some money on innovation and put it on one side, but to actually take that innovation and deploy it, kind of grasping the nettle, doesn't that need some kind of an event, a takeover or some sort of crisis to make that happen?
No, doesn't need an event, but an idea that's solving a problem that's bothering someone at the moment is an idea that's likely to be timed well, put it that way. So in my experience is when somebody's got some massive business problem, they're pretty happy to talk to you about it, because they're literally drowning, and you look like a person with a life preserver. So
right.
It does. You do need a rationale, but I kind of wish you didn't, actually. I think we should be all a bit open to okay, we're making lots of money, but wouldn't it be nice to make more? Or we're doing things well, wouldn't it be nice to do things even better? I suppose in my mind, I've always thought you should change all the time. It's a pity to wait for a crisis. It's just, but maybe that's the way we're wired. Lots of people are waiting for the crisis, but look, I've found that you receive a better reception when people are in trouble, but you can also receive a good reception anyway, most of the time.
I think my experience at the moment is most of our customers probably haven't got the one big thing they want to solve. They've got a whole host of small things, and the biggest challenge is to say, okay, well, we can't do them all at once, even though we want to. Which one are we going to do first? And that can be a bit of a challenge too, because you have to let things lie. So we can't do anything about that, because if you try and do everything, you end up achieving nothing.
Yeah, I suppose my I've experienced both. I've experienced when you've got more problems than you can poke a stick at, and I've experienced when people don't necessarily feel the need to change. And but part of that's the role, isn't it? It's to persuade. I've found a better way to do things. Would you be interested? It probably won't kill you if we implement this change.
Yeah,
it's possible it might, but
I see, David, you've raised a hand, but I think I'll keep on track and just get you a question at the end. So we did a bit of a dry run. So one of the big questions, I think, was what do you think are the key challenges facing the industry, particularly the transport industry, is your most recent experience?
Yeah, I think it's the availability of data on this one, or rather the form that data takes. I think people are not good with data. I think transport industry uses a lot of paper, uses a lot of Excel spreadsheets. It doesn't have it well structured. It doesn't have it necessarily in a form that is easy to use. You talked about fatigue management in the intro. I think that's an interesting area. But last time I looked, I think a lot of truck drivers were using manual log sheets, and they're really a pain in the neck to get into a digital form. I was talking to someone the other day who's been hired to do some work for a large trucking company, and he went looking for data, and it kind of didn't exist. And I think we all need to not do that. We need to treat data with a degree of respect. Think that it might be important one day, and start collecting it and keeping it in a nice structured form. And I think that's the root. One of the roots of all evil for the transport sector, at least. It's probably a problem for lots of sectors.
Yeah. So I suppose one of the questions we had too was, well, what do you think is getting in the way of? I mean, if this is recognised as a problem, what do you think is getting in the way of solving it? Really?
Yeah, I think it's awareness. Really, I think people just don't know. They're not sufficiently trained, and therefore that it's not their interest. They're running operations. They don't know what to do with data, or how the data might be possible, how it might possibly help them. And so that's a big issue. There's sort of three issues I see in the adoption of any technology, like perhaps optimization. One is people don't really appreciate what it might be able to do for them. I think the second one is all the people out there looking for perfection when they don't get it. They're reluctant to take on a solution, and then there's the people who think that the business case doesn't stack up, and I guess if the business case doesn't stack up, so it shouldn't do it. And proceed with optimization. But there's sort of three classes of people out there: those who don't know, those who do know but want perfection, and those who have doubts about the business case. And I guess if you've got doubts, no one ever got what's the word? No one ever got fired for not making a mistake, I suppose.
Yeah.
So do nothing. I must say I don't like that approach. I really think you should do stuff, and if it doesn't work out, well, at least you probably learnt a lot, and then have another go. I don't like this. The reluctance not to act is a bit of a cancer, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's the old story about you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs.
Yeah.
You
got to have a go. You got to have a go. You always learn, and do you make mistakes? Plenty, but as long as nobody dies, have another go.
Yeah. So when we spoke last, you had a story of something you did yourself that was instructive in your career around innovation.
It wasn't. It's not a good story, but it's a happy story, I suppose. I remember years and years ago, I found myself in an office where a guy and his able assistant had the job of every day planning what steel coils would go on a train, and he, I'd met him for an hour or so before he told me that computers weren't ever going to be able to help him solve his problem, and so after an hour of getting to know him, I said, I reckon if you can say in English what you're trying to do, I think I can get a computer to help you solve your problem here. And so it's a good challenge. And really what we were able to do was build an application that helped him load his train in 15 minutes or so. And the change in him was magnificent, and the ability for that company to hang on to that very basic piece of software for about 15 years was incredible to me. We know that for years and years after the software went in, people would call me and ask me about this particular software, and they even had, I don't know, a $5 or $6 million software program come through their place, and they said, well, whatever you do, you can retire every other piece of software, but you got to keep this because it helps us load the train. And for me, it spoke volumes about change management. It spoke volumes about how maybe a simple thing can be very, very valuable to individuals. And yeah, I just kind of like that story. So
Yeah.
the question is, are there simple things out there that you can do? And I suspect that there are lots for all companies.
But do you see, I mean, that used to be the way that I think things were done in the past with software. Is you can write a program. I need a program to do this. Off you go and buy it, go and write it. Now we need to find and buy one for some reason. I'm not entirely sure whether that's always the best approach, is to look for what they call the commercial off-the-shelf solution to maybe what is quite
yeah. Well, having seen a lot of stranded software, I can understand why people want to go commercial off the shelf as well. But I think there's a continuum between commercial off the shelf and bespoke anyway, isn't there? And by the time you configure your commercial off the shelf, you may well have done just about as much work as writing a unique piece of software.
Yeah, and there's also commercial on the shelf.
Yes.
There's a fair amount of that too, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that was a nice one. We also had an example, which was a project that you and Leslie did for me, which was labour scheduling in a very large warehouse north of Melbourne. And it was a project that didn't, I'll get to the punchline, it didn't get taken up. But it was unfortunate because it worked very well, and some of the ideas embodied in the software that you guys developed were, I think, world leading for warehouse management then, and I think they're pretty much world leading for warehouse management now. And basically, we were scheduling the labour in the warehouse. There was 500 people and 18 particular tasks they could do, and each of those 500 people had some of the skills to do some of those tasks, and their degree of skill was variable. So you could be good at sweeping the floor, but not so good at driving the forklift. But you could be great at driving a forklift, but not so good at picking items off shelves and so on and so forth. And if you could load up, the idea was if you could load up all that data, you could create labour plans that were optimal for this large warehouse. And at the time, there were 3 people who were making these labour plans, and we found that we could press a button and get it done in about 10 minutes. And the 3 people took a week to do it. So it's a very attractive idea, not sort of a bit like the train loading one, but just 1,000 times more complicated. And we just couldn't get it. And again, like the train one, the train example had a willing subject, but the guys in the warehouse were a bit worried about the software might. I think they were worried that the software would take away the work that they like to do, and it would have meant that they could do some other kind of work. But they resisted, and they were good at it, and so we didn't get that project. We got the project complete, but we didn't get it accepted into production. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, it's not the only one. In terms of change, I mean, change management is a major problem that we come across.
It is. I don't know that I've got the answer to that either, but I think you try to be as less threatening as you possibly can be would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Well, we don't normally say to our customers the objective of any form of optimization is to make people redundant. It's to get more out of the resources you've got. You know, like the
and neither was that the case here. Yeah. It was, but it was certainly. Now I can remember going back to my days when I was once upon a time people let me program computers, and I was doing it for a mining company. And when you're a geologist, as I was back before computers were invented, the geologists that I saw in this mining company were spending 80% of their time massaging data. That back to that original problem, we don't have the data, and 20% of their time being geologists. And I thought, gosh, if we could computerize some of that hack work, we could quadruple our geological pool and geological effort and find more gold mines and things like that. And that was the reality. So we set off and computerized a whole lot of stuff back in the day. But that's the opportunity, isn't it? Is we use technology to take away some of the drudgery. We also use technology to solve problems that we can't possibly solve ourselves, and you're sort of attacking problems from both ends.
Yeah, good. So before I open it up to the floor, there was one last question around what do you think is the next big thing in technology that you see coming, or is already here, but unevenly distributed, as they say?
Yeah, it's very hard to say, but I think there's some obvious ones. I think we'll see a lot more automation in warehouses. Possibly the next thing for warehouses could be automated unloading of containers and vehicles and automated loading of them in as individual cartons being singly moved by some sort of robotic device. For vehicles, I actually thought that autonomous vehicles might not be that far away, and I did some research last night, and Mobileye seemed to have come up with a system that they call level 3 now in certain circumstances. So I think there's steady progress there. I think we'll see some kind of automation there and driverless vehicles. And whether it comes to cars or trucks first, I imagine it'll come to trucks before it'll come to cars. You know, that could be a big deal, particularly for places like Australia and routes like Melbourne to Sydney. That would be pretty cool. I think I could see that happening. And the question that I was asked every week whilst I was in innovation at Toll is, why don't we use drones for delivery? And the answer was it wasn't economic. I do think we might see drones flying people around. I noticed there was an article in one of the newspapers today about flying taxis, and I think we might see that.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd call it the next big thing, but I think we might live to see that.
Yeah, in Europe, there's an Italian company that's developed an electrical flying ambulance, which is quite interesting because helicopters are ruinously expensive, but this thing is
just an electric. It's an electric helicopter.
Yeah, but it's instead of like $500 an hour to run, it's probably only $20 an hour to run.
And you might not need someone to drive it.
Yeah, well, that's the other issue. Yeah. Okay. Look, thanks, Peter. I was going to open up the floor. I know David's put his hand up, so maybe your question, David, and then any others for Peter.
Hey, Peter. Something we talked about when we had a chat the other day was you brought up the classic Donald Rumsfeld's known knowns and unknown unknowns. And what do you think is an unknown? Pick an industry that you think interests you, because this could be quite, I guess anything. What do you think is something that's maybe from your perspective an unknown in some industries where there's something that you see as being quite important that you don't really see people attacking or really focusing on at all? Do you have you might not have an example, but I was just thinking of if there's anything that you thought was really kind of prudent that needs worked on.
Look, I think No, I don't have anything off the top of my head, but I think I think you have to go far to find people who don't know about stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, so artificial intelligence, what's that going to do for some
Yeah.
people? Everybody doesn't know anything. Yeah. I think, yeah, I think the only people that know anything about that are probably on the
Yeah.
call. But so most people don't know about that, and how's that going to help them? You know, God knows. A favourite topic of mine was the tracking of freight. I think
Yeah.
not everyone's sort of across how freight can be tracked and whether that's a good idea or not. Optimization's a mystery to most people.
Yeah.
I think you have to go very far. I think
Yeah, sure.
I think the issue is primarily an education one. You know, we need to educate people about all the nice things that technology can do, and then we need to educate people that changing is perhaps not as hard as you think it might be.
Yeah.
Or adoption of technologies.
I definitely think there's a kind of like we've always done it this way ism, particularly in I have a lot of experience in healthcare, and you know, it's like talking to nurses who've been around for 40 years, and they're like, it's always been pen and like it works, and you're like, things don't need to necessarily be broken to be fixed, like to need fixing. Like, you know, it might work, but it could be a lot better. So
and look, that's you need to really walk in people's shoes to understand why they think like that, and thinking like that could be quite reasonable. It just takes time to sort of learn other people's world, and I suppose it takes those people time to learn your world. Back to education is probably what we're looking for. I'm pretty sure if you any sort of swanky salesman that came in with a box that sort of went ping or something like that, wouldn't last very long.
Yeah.
So it takes time, and I think in Australia we need to get our sort of runners on and run a bit harder. I noticed at the latest what was it, the summit, a woman stood up and said, I think we're older, fatter and slower or something like that. You know, I kind of get the sense that we might be as a country, and I think we need to try to think about that. Is this what people are like in Singapore, and is this what people are like in Europe? They all just like that, or are we a little bit inclined to be, or disinclined to be, adventurous?
A bit complacent.
Peter, I would definitely agree with that, because I spent quite a lot of time working in projects in North America, and it's a different ballgame. It's way more competitive.
We're too comfortable. Maybe we need to get a little bit uncomfortable.
Well, you see that most of the trade exposed industries we have gone. Like, we don't make any cars anymore because it was too hard. They make cars in England, they make cars in Germany, they make cars in America. There's no reason. Anyway, don't go me onto that subject. No, I've got one more thing I was going to throw at you, and then I think we'll hopefully get some questions from the floor. I have a theory that says that the more people put in enterprise IT, it's actually holds back innovation. I mean, if you talk to somebody about making a change, and they have to ring up, and I won't name the company, but a particular ERP company, they're scared to death of the cost. And we've got customers who, they cannot change what they do because IT has no money to spend on system X, so they have to carry on doing something which they know is bad for them, but they have no resources to be able to pay for the modification to their ERP system.
Yeah, I think there's a model. I don't know if it was unique to Talbot or invented by Talbot. There's a model of stratification of systems that sort of went there are these base level systems that need to stay in place and be really robust, and there's these middle systems that can change over time, and then there's a top tier set of systems where you can go crazy and be adventurous and be innovative and all that sort of stuff. That's the model that they're evolving to, and I think it's a good model.
Yeah.
And it solves that problem.
Yeah, it certainly affects a lot of our customers. Anyway, can I ask if anyone else in the audience or on the call would like to ask something of Peter? It sounds like we've covered everything, Peter.
I may have a question actually. So when you were talking about the change management and the geologist's example was quite interesting, because you've got a group of people that are highly skilled in and presumably love doing what they do, and they have a lot of tedious things they unfortunately have to do, which you can take away.
In the good old days,
yeah. But then when you look at, say, the workforce rostering example in the warehouse you mentioned, you've got people that basically just do that, and there may not necessarily be something that isn't a major effort for them to learn to do something different when you automate most of their job. So I wonder how you envisage the change management for that sort of workforce.
Yeah, I think in that warehousing case, there are always aspects of the role that optimization didn't solve. So that residual, which could be strategic, or it could be, now let us consider turnover, or now let us consider absenteeism, or now let us consider, you move to higher order problems. I guess you've got to sell that.
Yeah,
people are used to just assembling data and pushing out an answer, and that was the challenge, wasn't it? It was how do you sell? We'll take away the spade work and give you a higher order problem to solve, which they never had the time to do because they were too busy using the shovel. But I think that's exactly the change management argument that needs to be brought.
Because it's the exception handling. So we sort of with transport we sort of have the same thing. Like you've got a dispatcher, and you'd want to automate most of their decision making and let them deal with the difficult ones and the exception handling. Yeah. But of course, it requires a lot more thinking effort, and maybe they actually prefer doing the more tedious things because they can do it.
Yeah, well, there's that's true too. There are lots of people who, the problems that they know they can solve are the ones that you might gravitate to solving because you have a sense of, I've done a good day's work today. I've solved all these straightforward problems that could be solved by Leslie's computer. But I feel good. So yeah, it's not. When you're messing with people's lives, I think you need to be sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I know time's getting on, and Leslie's stringing this out because he's doing the next presentation. So look, thanks very much, Peter. I think it's very, very interesting. And now if we've got at least 15 minutes, Leslie was going to talk about some stuff we've been building to do some more sophisticated problem solving around production scheduling and disruption management. So over to you, Leslie.
All right.
Are you okay with 15 minutes? You all right with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
I might bid you farewell, and
thanks, Pete.
Nice to see some familiar faces there.
All right. So can you all see the screen?
I can.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So we've those who've known us for longer, we've been doing quite a number of projects in production scheduling in the past. Most of those were more around mass-produced goods. What we've been doing more recently is around sort of larger types of products, if you like, say something like a train or a car or something like that, and which may also involve quite a lot of manual labor and may involve quite a lot of uncertainty and lots of components required. And what you have in that case is there's a lot of uncertainty of how long is something going to take. Do I have the required parts? And if I don't, what can I do instead? So this really came about around disruption handling and how to deal with sort of day-to-day changes and being able to replan quickly. But we build a whole production scheduling system because in part we found that we sort of had the approach of trying to just provide an optimization component and sit behind other systems, but more and more we're finding that a lot of the data we require and a lot of what's required to really run the optimization isn't necessarily there. So we've been moving towards building more end-to-end systems. So this is a sort of a demo interface we've built for this production scheduling system, and I'll walk you through the sort of things that it's incorporating. So what we're seeing here is, first of all, we've got what we're actually producing. So we've got 4 units of a product that we're producing. And each product, in order to produce it, requires a number of stages. So in here, we've got 2 stages that are partly done simultaneously, partly stage 1 is done before stage 2 is started, and then you also have a final assembly stage where the product's fitted together, and we can see where each of the products is currently being manufactured. So we've got a number of workstations. We've got 5 workstations here, and we can see where each of those products sit and where they're being worked on. So we've got 2 units here that are in sort of earlier stages of completion, and then we've got 1 unit where we've started both stage 1 and stage 2, and they're in 2 different workstations. And then we've got 1 unit that's being in the final assembly stage. So what we've got in terms of how to plan the production then is, we've got the product, we've got a master design for the product, and that consists of a number of tasks or assembly tasks that have a expected duration, require a number of workers to complete it, have dependencies on other tasks being completed, have a workstation where it can take place. So if you have specific equipment in a certain workstation, we'd incorporate that. And each assembly here has one or more, well, I'll choose another one, has 1 or more components as well. And each component within, again, have a duration, have a number of workers required, and some dependencies. So that'd be a sort of master data. And so that's the design, and this is for types of products where the design may potentially change throughout the production process. So if you're building something new when you're learning as you go, like you're building a new type of train set, for instance, you'd have the initial design, but as you produce units, you may make some tweaks, and then later units may use a slightly changed design. So we've got the design, we copy that over, and we've got a number of products that we're or units that we're producing, and they've got the same sort of information. And from that we've got the dependencies, we've got the durations, we've got all that sort of information. So from that we can build a master schedule, which will tell you what's being worked on over a long period of time. So I can scroll out. This is over potentially a quite large period of time, and you can see what's being worked on at different points in time. And then we'll also create a detailed schedule to say what each worker will be doing and what's being worked on at any day and any hour. So in order to do a more detailed schedule, we obviously need to know what's our workforce looking like. So we'd have a roster. So we've got a number of staff members here. They've got a shift pattern. These are quite simple, so they do either morning shifts or afternoon shifts 5 days a week. They may have specific skills, so they could be just general operators or regular staff member specialists, and so there's different types of skill levels, different availabilities. We can put in annual leave in the roster, and also we can put in sick leave if when we're doing as part of the disruption handling. You can also give people overtime, so I'll showcase some of those aspects. So we've got a roster, we know what needs to be done, and then we can see where we're actually currently at, so what's already been completed, what's in progress. And so we can look at all of the components for each unit, whether all of the raw materials or all of the inputs to it are available, and where we're at with installing or fitting that component. So you'll have things that are, well, first of all, there's a lot of them that already have been completed. So we keep track of that. And then there'll be a number of components currently being installed. So we've got in progress for those, and we've got how far we're into that process. And then there's others that are scheduled. So they're already appearing in the schedule we've built. And then there's others where we don't yet know when the required parts will be available, so they'll be just pending tasks. So typically in production scheduling, people would manually build a schedule and say, okay, today this is what's going to happen. So we've got all of our staff members, and we say what they're going to do each shift. So we've got the shifts here. So the green bit is when staff is available, and we can see what activities are being scheduled for each of the staff members. We can scroll down further. You can sort of see that there's just a few days being scheduled. But doing that manually is obviously a lot of work. You have to look at how many people do I need? Do they have the right skills? What are the precedences? What are the priorities? So you don't want to create bottlenecks. You want to keep people busy. You want to make sure that everything is completed as early as possible, so that nobody's waiting for anything. So we've got an automatic optimized scheduling capability that will actually produce these schedules. So first, just clear the current schedule, which will remove everything after what's currently being worked on. And then I can automatically schedule based on all of those. Okay, so it added all of those activities. And now what we can see is, so we can track what's happening. And now we can make so the disruption handling aspect of this would be, what if something changes? Like, what if somebody is calling in sick? We could put some people on sick leave, or just take a few people that are working afternoon shifts, and I'll just take them. So it's Tuesday today. I'll just make them unavailable. So I'll put them on sick leave. I'll just put not this one. I'll put these two people on sick leave. I may also give somebody overtime just to showcase that sort of behavior. So I'll give this person 2 hours of overtime. If I go back to the detailed schedule, what you'll see happening. Yeah, so what you see is, this would be the sick day sick leave days. Now obviously, because it happened in the past, it can't make any change to that. Unfortunately, I can't go far enough into the future to update this. But so the other sort of things in terms of disruption handling, so you can make change staff availability. The other thing you can change is progress. So you can say, for instance, here, and that's something I can demonstrate more easily. Let me just quickly do that. So we'll go to the current day, which is the 6th of September. Just scroll to that quickly. So the other thing we could do is say something's not available, so not staff but an activity. Say for instance this one here. So this is component is 1067.2. I'll just look that one up. So that's currently in progress. What if something's gone wrong with that? I can put it on hold. When I do that, you'll see it stopped the activity. And then schedule, it will find other things it can do. So obviously when something's on hold, anything that depends on it being completed also can be scheduled, but potentially a lot of other things can. So here it's there were 2 people working on that one, I think, and it found a different activity now for those people to do. Similarly, so you can put things on hold, you can change the progress. So the idea is from time to time you go through the shop floor, look at where we're at, and then say, okay, we're running behind on this, or we're ahead of schedule for that. And you can change the progress to so what we do is we calculate what we expect the progress to be based on when it was last manually entered, and then you can make changes. So it's a bit like you're driving. We think an hour ago you left this place, so we think you'd be about here by now, but then when you get an update, we're actually behind of schedule or we're ahead of schedule. We can then enter that and again reschedule based on that. So if we're ahead of schedule, obviously less work to be completed, so there'd be gaps in the schedule that will fill up. If we're behind of schedule, it will have to schedule more for that particular activity, and we will have to adjust the schedule and extend it forwards and move things forward. So, and you'll see that it's filling up everybody's roster very well, in that it's not leaving any gaps. So we keep everybody busy. If I could show you how the overtime and sick leave worked on the current time, you'd see it happening there as well. And it's incorporating a lot of constraints in terms of what people can do, how many people can work simultaneously at a given workstation. A lot of these sort of constraints that are actually very hard to incorporate when you're doing it manually, and in particular if you have to reschedule every time there's a disruption. And with this sort of work, a disruption happens basically all the time, because you're always going to be slightly ahead or behind schedule on one thing, and then the other way around on something else. Machine failures, all these sort of things can happen. So for production processes where there's a lot of variability, or when you have urgent orders and move ups and that sort of situations, you really need a system that automatically builds optimized schedules, and you can run this continuously throughout the day, keep tracking of where you're at, and use that to to create delivery dates for your customers and do the whole end-to-end supply chain optimization. One other thing is we can produce a schedule of when materials are required for each of the assembly tasks. So it's a bill of materials. So based on what the schedule looks like, we'd provide a latest time we need all of the parts based on the schedule, and so what the latest time would be to order parts if there's a lead time from suppliers, and we can also produce a number of reports in both Excel or Word or any other format that would show you basically the same sort of information that's in the schedule, but in an Excel format or a Word format, and then you can feed that into other systems or use that just for reporting purposes. So we'll probably be running out of time a bit now.
We're over time actually, Leslie. Yeah. But before, I mean, I'm sure we can maybe put some more detail next time. But I think in the interest of time, we better say thank you to everyone for attending, and thank you, Leslie, for that presentation. You ran yourself out of time by asking too many questions of Peter. Tara, do we have a tentative date for the next meetup?
Yes, we do. So the first week of December, so around the 6th of December, I think, to be exact.
Okay. Look, if anyone wants to stay on, if they've got burning questions, happy to take them. I'm sure Leslie would be happy to take them. But I think a lot of people have dropped off because of 1 hour meeting slots.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's draw it to a close. Thanks everybody for attending. I mean, I've had a few messages from people leaving saying thank you very much. So that's all good. And look forward to meeting you again in December. And like I said, the recording will be available in a few days. Won't it, Tahara, on the website?
It will, yes. I'll send an email out with the recording, and it'll also be on the website.
Okay. All right. Well, look, thanks for everyone, and see you next time.